In today's tutorial, I'm going to be walking you all through the traffic portion of big data analytics. I've already pulled it up here by selecting the traffic dropdown, and then we're going to start with traffic overview. By default, it's going to show you the last 7 days, but if you want to adjust the time settings, you can use this calendar to either select custom dates, or you can choose yesterday, last week, last month. I'm going to choose the last 30 days. Make sure you hit apply and run report to get that to load. So now we're looking at the last 30 days of traffic. On the default report, it's going to show you page views, but if you wanted to change that to visits or revenue, you can do that here. I'm going to change it to visits for this tutorial. So now we're seeing the visits over the last 30 days. If you scroll down, here we have it reported daily. If you'd like to see more entries, you can adjust this here. So we have the day, the visits for that day, page views. Visits are how many people come to your site, and page views is usually higher because some users will view multiple pages. Here are the page views per visit, so how many pages each user on average is visiting. Engaged page views is a unique metric for Ezoic, and what it's tracking is the number of page views where the user interacted with the page for a minimum of 10 seconds. These engagement metrics are really important because it shows you how users actually engage on the site. For example, if someone were to land on your website and they start reading and then they go make a cup of tea and come back, if you're just looking at average session duration, that's going to count for the entire time. But for a long portion of that time, the user wasn't even sitting in front of their computer. They were off making a cup of tea. So the reason that these engagement metrics are important is because they're more accurate. So it's actually tracking if users are on your site, if their mouse is moving, if they're scrolling, if they're copying and pasting, all of that. So this is why we really recommend using these engaged metrics. We also have the average visit duration, so how long they're staying on the site for each visit. We have the engage time, so as I mentioned, this will be lower typically because it's counting when users are actually engaging. And then bounce rate. If you wanted to adjust any of these, you can click the columns button right here. These are all the columns that are currently showing, but let's say you didn't want to see the visit duration or the time per visit. You can just deselect those. And then let's say you wanted to see the earnings per 1,000 visitors for that day. Once you click apply, it'll rerun this with the columns that you've selected. So you can edit this to show you the data that you want to see. Now you can see we have the earnings per 1,000 visitors over here. You can also add filters. So this is if you want to segment your the visits. So let's say we only wanted to include visits greater than 30,000. So this would show us all of the days with visits greater than 30,000. Up here, we can also segment our data. So if you only wanted to see mobile users or AMP traffic or things of that nature, you can do that here. But I do believe that was covered in another tutorial, so I'm going to skip that for this one. And then the last thing to show you, as you saw down here, it's showing us traffic per day, but you can also change it to hourly traffic, weekly traffic, monthly traffic. The weekly and monthly traffic is useful if you're looking at a longer time period, so you can see the trends week over week or month over month. Here we have the hourly, so a lot more data points here. You can also split it by desktop, mobile, and tablet traffic just by clicking up here. So let's go ahead and do desktop. And now we can see all of the desktop traffic. One thing to note when you're looking at these tutorials, it's really important that you're not judging or comparing your metrics to other sites because every single site is unique. There's a lot of different variables that go into the session duration, the bounce rate, the pages per visit. Some sites are reference sites. So someone comes to the site looking for what does LOL mean. They find that answer and they leave. They got the information they needed, but they're only going to visit one page, and that's totally okay. But then there's other sites where users are more likely to view more pages and they have a more inherent nature to spend more time on the site. So every site's very unique, and I wouldn't get caught up in looking at someone else's site and thinking, oh, they have a better bounce rate or I have a better bounce rate, because there's really a lot that goes into it and it's not worth trying to compare to other websites. And then lastly, the second tab over here is the traffic versus last year, which is good to compare to see how you're doing. In this top row right here, it will show you the overall performance. So you can see green arrow means it's up over last year, which is really good to see. We can see visits are up 131%. Always a good thing to see traffic increasing. And then here's all the other metrics. As I mentioned before, it's probably not a good idea to judge even your own site on these metrics, because oftentimes the content that you're sharing will change. You might used to write a lot of long form content, and maybe you've changed to more short form content, or maybe linking out to videos or things like that, so users aren't as engaged, or vice versa. So if you really want to understand how your content is performing, I would recommend going to the content section of Big Data Analytics and reviewing top landing pages year over year. But if you want to see an overall traffic performance, you can use this tab as long as you've been using for Big Data Analytics any Zoics platform for over a year. That's it.